Good morning, my name is Chris Adnan with Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm delighted to be joined by Connor Baker, a quantity surveyor at Gill Associates. Hello, Connor.
Hello, Chris.
Hey, thanks for giving up your time this morning. And I guess my starter for 10 question has to be, can you tell me about Gill Associates and what it is you do?
Yeah, so Gill Associates are a small quantity surveying practice in Ipswich. We've been around for 25, come up to 26 years now. And we are consultants that work in the construction industry in a variety of roles. It's kind of developed over the years.
Fantastic. When you say quantity surveyor, it's one of those job titles which I don't know if it's just me and it might be other people. I think on my head I might know what a quantity surveyor does or what the role actually entails. But from your experience as say someone who's in that role, if you had to define a quantity surveyor and what they do, how would you define it?
It is a difficult role to explain, mainly because there's two types of the same title. So a quantity surveyor can work either or a builder, a contractor on the kind of construction side, or you can be a quantity surveyor on the client side. So we're a client side practice. And what that means, and I think the way we try and describe it now, the more modern phrase is construction cost managers, because that really is the essence of what we do. We manage costs and finances on construction projects from long before they begin to long after they've ended. So I'd say a typical project, we might be involved at the feasibility stage. So somebody might be looking to buy a bit of land and they say, we want to put 10 houses on this bit of land. And we will, using the data we have inside the office here, say, well, the average for 10 houses of that sort of size might be X. And then that person can decide what they want to pay or not pay for that land. That might be something we do at the very start of a project. And that can kind of work through. So with that project, it might come back to you 6 months later and they've bought the land and say, well, actually, I've designed those 10 houses. Can you update your price? Now I've got some detail. We'll measure and price those houses out. And then I guess the next key stage for us would be we're kind of experts in procurement. It's a phrase that's used quite a lot in local government, but we do it on the private side. So we would take that scheme we've priced, we would package that up and send that out to the market and have builders price that work, analyze all those prices, negotiate with the builders and put them into contract for that work. And then while the project's on site, we would go to site every month. They'll apply for an amount of money to say we've done this much. We would measure and check they've done that work, certify the payment for that work. And that, I guess, is the core of what we do.
No, that's really interesting. And I'm not gonna lie, before you sort of explained, as I say, the cost side of it there, I had no idea that quantity surveyors actually were involved that much in the costing process. As I say, I guess I was thinking more what you said with maybe sort of the construction builder side. So it's really interesting to learn about, as I say, that costing side of it. And you sort of said that you're, as I say, a small firm, but can you talk to me a little bit about the different roles within Gill Associates, and as I say, sort of who does what, I guess, on a daily basis?
Yeah, so at the moment there is 5 of us, myself and another director called Julian Harvey, and then we have 3 surveyors that work for us. And those actually, as a practice, we've kind of flattened out a little, so that the roles are probably not what they should be ideally, and we're looking at trying to change that. We need to bring someone in coming up, but we have, as you start, you'd come in as a trainee quantity surveyor, generally somebody who's just finished college, but we've taken all sorts of people in that role. You will then, for a period, depending on what qualifications you had coming in, do either 2 or 4 year program at university. We as a practice are members of the RICS, which is the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, and as part of that, any training we do are RICS courses. So for us, it's really important that we have third-party training to ensure that if that person wants to pursue their career right the way through and become a chartered surveyor themselves, that they've done the right training at the base to enable them to go up that ladder if they choose to. So you would come in as a trainee quantity surveyor. Most of the courses we've run through the practice here are 4 days in the office, 1 day out of the office at university, either one of the local universities or an online institution, depending on what suits the person. Probably about 2 years through that, you'll have picked enough knowledge up that you could be an assistant quantity surveyor. So you'd have live projects that you're working on, but with somebody else, maybe with myself, assisting and kind of going to all of those projects, seeing them, starting to get a handle of what a project's like day to day. And at the point you finish your training, you are a quantity surveyor. And from that point, the only real step is whether you want to achieve your chartered ship, and that's a separate route that we do through the RICS.
No, fantastic. Thank you. That's a really nice sort of succinct way of summarising, the potential career journey, and that's really interesting, as you say, sort of to know about the different sort of options they've got, as say what their training can lead to, and everything there. Out of curiosity, before, if someone's sort of coming in, as you say, maybe out of college or something like that, to yourselves, before they even get sort of the training or the support that's going to put them on the path to becoming a chartered surveyor, what kind of qualities and traits are you looking for potentially in a young person, which makes you think, actually, okay, this career path and journey would be good for you? Are there any, as I say, sort of core personality traits or characteristics?
I think so, and I would say, as a practice, the soft skills are more important to us than probably the academic skills. What we do here is quite niche. Like you said, if you hadn't encountered a practice like this, you probably don't know what we do.
Mm.
And I think that sometimes gives the impression it's very difficult. And there certainly are elements of our jobs that do get quite complex and difficult, but only at the point you're ready for them. So really, for us, the soft skills are more important. I think the things we look for: a willingness to learn. I think that's really important. I would say ambition, but actually we've got people who work for the practice here that don't want to become chartered surveyors. They're quite happy that they've got to their point. They enjoy their work. That's fine for them. They don't want to do the academic side. So ambition, if it suits you, it's something that you can do here, but isn't a necessity. I think a little bit of confidence, because there are certainly times in this particular role, because you're talking about money, that there's elements of conflict, professional conflict, not there's
no fisticuffs involved,
yeah, there's no danger involved. You're certainly safe, but there is professional back and forth. There's conflict there. So somebody who's willing, I think, or maybe not willing, but comfortable with that being a possibility, is quite an important trait, we would say. So yeah, willingness to learn and a little bit of confidence will get you a long way.
No, that's brilliant, and I appreciate your honesty in that. And you've actually sort of touched a little bit on what my next question was going to be. You've talked a little bit about the challenges within the role, if you see what I mean. And this next question will come in two parts, really. Firstly, I know there's no such thing as a typical day, but I dare say I'm going to ask you about a typical day. So the first part of the question will be, can you sort of talk us through maybe what a typical day, as I say, sort of for someone in your organisation is like? And the second part of the question is, what do the good days look like, and what do the bad days and maybe some of the challenges that I face in those bad days look like?
Okay. For a typical day, I'll go with a typical day for one of our employees, I think, because a lot of my days spent doing things that aren't interesting and things that probably won't be relevant to the young people watching this video, if they do. Yeah, insurances and fee proposals probably aren't that interesting to anyone else. But a typical day for a surveyor here would be, you may have a site meeting on any one day. So each of our projects, and typically for construction in England, most live projects, the team will meet once a month to review the progress of that project, to see, are we on time? How are the costs going? Lots of things are discussed. As the quantity surveyor in that role, attending that meeting, the element for you would be, that's the point where you'll look around the site, check what's been done, and agree a value of that work to be paid that month. So that's the kind of core element of why you're there. The client will be at that meeting, so it's often, let's use a house as an example, somebody who's doing an extension to their house, which is probably one of the smaller projects and one more likely to be something a young person working here would be involved in. They might be looking at changing the tiles from one to another. So the builders come back and said, yeah, I can get the tiles. It will be a 2-week delay, but that's not a problem. For us, we would then be valuing, well, actually a 2-week delay has a cost to it because they're going to be on site a bit longer. What's the value of that? What's the value of the new tiles against the old ones? Measuring to see if the quantity's changed, and then looking at the product. And then being able to discuss that with the client, saying it's going to cost you £2,100 to make that change. Do you still want to do it? And if so, then doing the paperwork to make that change. And that happens on every project once a month. That might be part of a normal day. When you get back to the office, because a lot of what we do is actually site-based, you may well have your cost report put together for another project. So each month we report back to our clients formally of where the costs have moved, just so they've always got a picture of what the outlay is looking like, what they've paid to date, these sort of things. So there's an element of report writing, but not a huge amount. And then in the afternoon, it may be that we've had a project in and someone's asked for us to do an estimate for a new sports centre. That's probably the higher end of the sort of work we do. And that a project like that, an estimate of that sort of size would probably be a team activity. So there might be you and one other surveyor working on that. You'd sit down, review all the drawings, say, well, I'm going to measure and price these bits, you measure and price that. And that might be your afternoon.
Oh, fantastic. And as I say, I think in actually describing sort of, as you say there, the sort of the typical day, I think you've addressed actually sort of what the sort of good parts of the role and the challenges are as well. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Like as I say, I mean, I guess in a nutshell, for you, when I say what drags you out of bed in the morning, what I mean, like, what are the parts about your job that you really enjoy and that you think to yourself, actually, like, that's why I'm in this industry?
I think there's an enormous amount of job satisfaction that come from this role. During the day while you're here, there is elements of satisfaction where you have helped a client. Not that all builders are bad, but innately their goal is to make money, and that shouldn't be frowned upon. That's what they're there to do. So the opposing surveyor, their goal is to try and charge you as much as they can for something to be done. So clients are very appreciative and can see where you've saved them some money. So that side of it's very enjoyable, very satisfying. And when you're not here, and certainly for the 8 years I've been at this practice, probably worked on 50 or 60 projects. As I drive around Ipswich, Cambridge, London, I can, and much to my wife's dismay, point at that building, I worked on that building. And there's something about that that's really enjoyable, especially because we work locally quite a lot with the local councils. It's nice that in your immediate area and where you live, you can see buildings and know you've contributed to those going up. So that is, yeah, very satisfying.
No, brilliant. Yeah, I could definitely, and especially for something which I guess is going to be a long-lasting reminder. As you say, there are some industries where you work on projects and they're there for, as I say, days or months or hours. Whereas, say, you can be driving throughout East Anglia, and there'll be things that are going to be there for the next 50 years, 100 years, beyond that. So, as you say, almost a long-lasting legacy as well, which must provide great satisfaction.
I don't know if I'd take it that far, but yeah, it's very satisfying.
No, brilliant. And we sort of come on to my sort of final question now, really, which I'll ask for in 2 parts again. So the first part of the question, and I'm not saying you didn't wake up one morning and think to yourself, you know what, I want to be a partner in a firm, I want to be a quantity surveyor, but can you? So yeah, the first part of the question is, can you just talk to me a little bit about your career journey, sort of how you made the decisions you made and how you came to be where you are now? And the second part of that question will be, and I ask all the employers I speak to this, going back on the experiences you've had and the things you've learned along the way, if you could go back and speak to, let's say, 17-year-old Connor, about to go out on your sort of career journey and do things, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, I've managed to forget the first part of the question.
So the first part was, you tell us a little bit about your career path and how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't take the usual route into surveying, and maybe that's part of my success, maybe not, I'm not sure. I went to university at 18 and studied performing arts and arts marketing, not the usual route in for somebody in the construction industry. I was adamant I was going to go and work at the council and run the arts programs. That industry doesn't exist anymore. The government funding's not there for the arts. So midway through my training, my job no longer existed. So I had to kind of pivot and find something else to do. I finished my degree, ended up still working in local government. I went to work for the local council, and I was doing project management generally. Not something I was trained to do, but I think something that naturally I was drawn to. I feel like I'm quite organised and I think friendly. I think part of that helps certain projects run smoothly, which again is why I talk about the soft skills. I think they are really critical. And through working in a very generic role at local government, I ended up working with lots of different departments. And at a point, probably 10 years ago, I then moved into the construction team of the council. So they were project managers, but they dealt with just council funded large construction projects, not specifically Ipswich. So I kind of found my way into construction through project management, not as a construction professional. And from there, ended up working with local consultants, and a role came up at Gill Associates to take the kind of generic training I've done and make that more formal. And that has just been then a 7-year journey, I guess, up the ladder here.
Oh, fantastic. And the second part of the question is to say, based on the experiences you've had, and as you sort of said there, you've had some maybe sort of challenges where you've had to rethink things as you've sort of gone along and stuff. But as I say, taking into account the experiences you've had and the things you've learned, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of career advice, what would it be?
I think advice to myself, probably just relax, it'll be okay. But I think if I was to give, career advice to somebody who's 17 generally, I think what I would say is you probably don't always know what you're going to do. And don't be worried about that. That's absolutely fine. What I would say is make the most of any role you're in, really commit to it. Say you're working in retail, it might not be what you always dreamed of doing, but I think if you really commit to it and give it a good shot, it might be that you end up moving through that world and really enjoying it. And if you've committed really to whatever that role is and you're not enjoying it, then you can be certain. If you don't really fully give it your all, you're never going to know if it's really for you. So I think, yeah, wherever you are, fully commit, and there's nothing wrong with trying something before moving on if it doesn't work out.